I've been looking forward to this. So I sent out an email this week. I said I want to do a sermon on communication, and I went through Proverbs. I went through all Proverbs over a couple of days, kind of slowed it down, and I isolated every passage that had to do with communication. And by the time I was done, I realized I had 2 sermons worth. So guess what? This is part 1 of part 2. Bear with me. I hope that you'll find both lessons profitable. And it's actually funny, someone I'm kind of working with, studying with right now, that'll come up to Starbucks, asked me what I was preparing, and I was describing it to them, and they said, man, it sounds like a person needs to learn how to read the room. And I was cracking up. I said, you just renamed my lesson for me, and they got really excited about that. And that actually is you know I'm being a little lighthearted about this, but Proverbs really does kind of have a read the room approach. The book of Proverbs is not a book of perfect formulas that tells you exactly what situation you're in and what to do. The book of Proverbs are these wise sayings that are just true about life. Like the book of Proverbs will tell you like something, wealthy people make friends by their wealth. I'm just telling you, that's just true. It's not trying to tell you to become wealthy to make friends. It's just saying like, that's like true. And so it has all these wise sayings, and what you find is that Proverbs is basically saying, here are things that are true about life. Take it in, understand it, believe it, and then learn when to apply it. And if you're like me, I mean, we love this book. And then I was like, well, how am I going to arrange this? I'm like, I know what I'll do because there's so much in here. I'll do a kind of pros and cons. But then the problem is that so many verses have both a positive and negative approach. So I couldn't do that. So then as I isolated every passage through the book of Proverbs, I just began to read each one by one. And I thought, what's the main takeaway from this one? And then I found out of all these Proverbs, there was about 8 to 10 categories where they had common denominators. And the funny thing is, I'm preaching about how to communicate, but this first lesson, actually, I'll give no advice about how to say something. That's going to come next week. Because here's what I found, brethren. The first thing, as I began to isolate all these passages, surprise, surprise, I was reminded that before you get into this at all, you have to check your heart. You know, I preach unapologetically so about motivation. For pressing milk produces curds. Pressing the nose, or sometimes the translation can have like the twisting, or some commentators, it's like you're like punching a guy. Pressing the nose produces blood, and pressing anger produces strife. One of the things that we have to acknowledge about ourselves is that some of us are more hot-tempered than others. Okay? Some of you don't struggle with that. Some of you do. Why do you struggle with that? Well, that's a different discussion. But you do. We have to figure out, and do I just like arguing? Here's another one. Do not say, I will do to him as he has done to me. I will pay the man back for what he has done. Now, we're talking about communication. Let me just say right now, I know our minds typically go to the husband-wife relationship, and understandably so. This is not just the husband and wife relationship. God, we would not know who God is unless he communicated that to us, correct? And we would not be able to function together unless we could communicate. Communication affects everyone in every scenario. Our hearts, if we have a, well, you done this to me, I'll do it to you mentality, we've already lost the battle. Also, here's another angle. Sometimes the person you're arguing with is actually not the person that has done the harm to you. It's someone else in your past that has done the harm to you. Sometimes the reason why we have aggressive behaviors, why we are mean to people, is because someone in our past has been mean to us. And that could have been a parental figure, someone that had a lot of impact. And so what happens in that situation is I'm actually taking out on you what they did to me. So another Starbucks customer, sorry, if you're visiting, no, I don't work at Starbucks. Although I've been offered now many times. That's the joke. I come in and they go, "You're late." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, I'll start working when you send me my check, is the joke that's gotten really old. No, I go there to do my work, and so I meet all these people. And one of the guys' name is Ryan, and I like Ryan. But we're catching up. How was your Thanksgiving? He goes, it was bad. I said, "Oh man, what happened?" He's like, "My wife was a mess." And I'm like, I know what she looks like. I'm looking over my shoulders to make sure. And it's kind of one of those awkward, like, talk about communication. Should I engage in this? Should I entertain this? And I'm like, man, I'm sorry to hear this. He's like, she was just getting on to everyone from the moment she woke up. And he's like, she got in a fight with my mother-in-law for Thanksgiving. And I was like, oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I said, did something happen? And he goes, I just think, he's like, she had a lot of issues growing up, but she's got, in particular, a really dramatic story and something that happened to her on Thanksgiving. And he goes, and I am persuaded that whenever Thanksgiving comes around, she's struggling. And I think we're just the people that are on the other end. And when I say that and I see your head shaking, you're like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That kind of thing happens. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and be displeased and turn away his anger from him. Brethren, here's what I want to tell you. If you're struggling in communication with someone, and you're even right in your judgment that this person is doing wrong, be careful about your heart and what you think of them and what you want for them. That does matter to God. And to trust that he will take care of things in his way, in his time. Because if we don't trust in that, sometimes we take care of it our way, in our time, and it becomes messy. Amen? Now here's the deal. I've only got about 4 or 5 areas of focus. I'm already done with one of them. This lesson's going to go pretty fast, but I want to emphasize something. I'm moving on, but you got to hear this. Anything I'm bringing up in these 2 sermons, I think are fundamentally critical to communication. Pass over any of them and it will fail. So if we go, yeah, I get it, move on. No, listen, if we're not acknowledging our hearts, nothing that I say for the rest of this morning and next week is going to have any fruit in your life. Okay? So let's watch this. Listen. Can we go back to Communication 101? You remember your college classes in communication? Okay, here we go. Remember, in communication, what? Someone talks. Well, that's part of it. In communication, there's someone who speaks and there's someone who listens. Actually, if you want to have competent communication, you need to be a good listener. See, we're not even going to get to talking this morning. So you're like, I want to get to the talking part. We can't. Because what the Proverbs make clear is that we got to listen. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. And he did not make them in vain. They have a place, they have a purpose. Now, these are all very consistent with each other, so I'm reading them together, okay? By the way, Proverbs is one of those books, it'll make you grin. We'll talk about why it makes you grin in a little bit. But for sure, one of the ways it makes you grin is because you see this in other people. Poverty and disgrace come to him who ignores instruction, but whoever heeds reproof is honored. Any coworker you're thinking about right now? The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. The ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence. The fear of the Lord is instruction and wisdom, and humility comes before honor. It is the arrogant, the prideful individual that thinks that they're helping themselves, that thinks that they're furthering what they want to do by just blabbing. But the reality is, the proverb says you're actually hurting yourself. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Have you ever tried to reprove someone and it wasn't effective? Listen, don't take it too personal. Sometimes it's because they don't want to hear. You've not done anything wrong. Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. Easy enough? If one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame. One of the reasons that we're having bad communication is because we didn't hear the whole thing out. I'm going to refrain, actually. I got some more comments about this, not yet. Proverbs 25, possibly my favorite proverb, because it's something that I pray a lot for. It's something that I'm hoping God will grant me in time. I believe that in the kingdom we need men and women that are paying attention and that are growing in wisdom and can counsel, because the purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Those of you who are older, you know what it is to speak to someone younger and they're complaining or they're pouring their heart out or they're hurt about something, and you tell them and you go, hey, but what's really going on? Do you think that's what's really going on? Is that what the real problem is? Because as time goes on, you've done enough listening that you realize they're talking about the wrong thing. Do you know that young people don't even know sometimes the question to ask? Because they've not gone through it yet. And sometimes people are hurting in a way that they can't pinpoint what it is, but you've been through that and you're like, oh, I know what that is. That sounds very familiar. See, what that is but you got to listen before you answer. And so as you can see, all of this begins to blend together. Well, first I'm going to check my heart, right? And then I'm going to listen. But here's the thing. It's very hard to listen while you're what? While you're talking. Be quick to hear, slow to speak. Next week we'll get into the last one, slow to anger. Anger's a big one. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Anyone ever watch YouTube? Right? A fool's lips, this is funny. A fool's lips walk into a fight and his mouth invites a beating. I feel like that was taken from like the Briggs translation. That sounds like something Billy or David and I would have said. You just want a beating. A fool's lips walks into a fight and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his ruin and his lips are a snare to his soul. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Guys, God ultimately is pinning this. We need to hear something. God looks at situations and he looks at us foolishly opening up our mouths and he goes, you totally deserve that beating. I mean, you asked for that. Now, whether that person should have given you the beating or not is another discussion. You asked for it. When words are many, transgression is not lacking. Oh. But whoever restrains his lips is prudent. Do you know the person that can't stop talking? Why do you talk so much? Do you think that everything you say is that gold? Did that really need to go on for 30 minutes? Are you just awkward? Like, can you just not stop talking? Do you know that person where they just take over the conversation? And it's like they can't stop. You know, the funny thing that I've noticed about the Word of God is this. So much of the Word of God, whenever you're talking to someone about it, it sounds common sense to them. They're like, thanks, Captain Obvious. Do you want to know why that is? Because they don't see themselves in the passages. The one simple passage that's like, well, yeah, 1 year to one person, the same person a year later, they finally see themselves in it, and all of a sudden they think it's the most profound thing, and they're like, oh, you got me, Lord. You kept me deep. They're like, well, the verse didn't change. You finally realize this one, I don't like this. Matter of fact, I'm waiting for some of you to start grinning because you know I talk too much. I don't know when this happened. I know whenever I was younger, the problem was my dad said, hey, learn how to get to the point quicker, Sean. And I've not perfected that yet. And then I started preaching. I'm like, hey, you know what's a really good profession for a guy that can't get to the point? Preaching. I think I'll be super effective in this arena. Well, and then you get into this situation where people, by the way, really odd to be in your late 20s and someone in their 60s is like, what do you think about whatever? And I'm like, what? What do you mean, what do I think about this? I just learned how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. I don't know, but the thing is that you begin to think that like everything you say is gold and that like you really do have an answer on everything. And at some point you just start talking. Can I say something? Please hear me out. Young people, you need to, we need to talk less. And if you're just someone who speaks out of awkwardness, and I also can fall into that, just let it be awkward. Can I encourage the older? Now here's the funny though, because the older, wiser people have learned to be more quiet. But what I'm saying is, would you speak up a little bit more? Because whenever you don't speak up, the young ones fill in the silence. We need to hear more about you, from you. But here's the problem. You keep running your mouth and you just allow yourself just babble. You're going to end up saying stupid stuff. Best case scenario. Worst case, you're going to end up saying sinful stuff. And Jesus says you will be judged for every careless word that comes out of your mouth. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. You got that setting, and everyone's sitting around, and that guy is just like, not the whole time said a word. And you don't have to communicate, and at the end, you're like, that guy's got something deep to say. Something deep to say. He was just thinking about McDonald's the whole time. You didn't even know. He's like, I'm so hungry. And it's cool in this house. What were we talking about? What? So he's saying even a guy that keeps quiet, people just think, wow, that's wise. A fool gives full vent to his spirit. Men, listen to this one. A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. Do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There's more hope for a fool than for him. Proverbs is kind of funny. Do you know one of the? I remember the first time I saw a video of a guy that got knocked out. YouTube. This is the way you gotta stay off YouTube. It's just not helping anybody. A guy got knocked out, and the attacker continued to punch him while he was knocked out. And when you see something like that, you go, that is criminal. We've gone from, okay, something escalated quickly, we went to physical blows, not good, but now you are literally hitting a man while he's down and out. You don't have to say everything that's on your mind. Whenever you've made your point, whenever you've expressed your concern, know when it's like, okay, it's enough. Quit hitting the guy while he's down. We don't have to express everything. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. And this is the last one I wanted to add in this category here, because in communication, we're also building trust. There is a time and a place where you may have to repeat something, share something. But generally speaking, brethren, we need to know that whether it's a spouse, whether it's a coworker, family member, whatever's going on, that we learn how to keep these issues to ourselves. You cannot be effective. You cannot be helpful to someone if they know, hey, if I express this to them, everyone's going to know about it. Anyone been guilty of that? Okay. Finally, what is all this giving opportunity for? Well, I got a good heart. Okay, so I want what is right, and therefore I'm going to listen. And of course, as I'm listening, I'm not talking, but I'm also not talking. I'm listening for a purpose, and that is I'm going to give thought. So next week we're gonna finally hit the play on. We're gonna get to speak. But this is the speech. So the last thing, give thought. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. But again, this is very complementary to Proverbs 25, talking about the deep waters of a person that can be drawn out. Listen, if we want to be those kinds of people, that kind of people that has something to say, it doesn't come without the right heart, without years of listening, years of being quiet to give thought. The heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. Brethren, it's a classic whenever you're in a confrontation, in particular, things are getting heated, or you've been offended, okay? Are you thinking about how to defend yourself, or are you thinking about how to answer correctly? There's a difference. Do you know what it is to talk to the person and you realize they're not even hearing me right now? They've already got a really good comeback, a really good argument, and you can just see it. They're like, wrap it up because I am about to slug you and knock you out. That's going back to a heart issue. Instead of a person going, I'm really kind of figuring out, okay, what's needed? See, the wise of heart is called discerning, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious and adds persuasiveness to his lips. Because to me, again, going back to motivation, even if a person has offended you, what is your goal? What is your goal with a person? Is it to help? To hurt? To hinder? To build up? To break down? You being right now, is that going to help the end goal? We're going to talk about how a soft answer turns away wrath next week. But brethren, what if your goal was to be effective and to try to actually pull both parties together so that they're on the same page? What if your goal was not how to show them how wrong they were, but to invite them into something to where you feel like a team now, and you do that by persuasive and sweet language? And I'm not talking about being dishonest. I'm talking about using wisdom. And you can find these situations, by the way, throughout the Bible. And finally, these are the last two passages. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. I came across these proverbs, and I put these aside for communication. And let me tell you why. I'll start with the last one there. If everyone in your neighborhood likes to get up early and make noise, then no harm. You're like, I just wanted to bless my neighbor. Yeah, but you know everyone's sleeping right now, right? So was this really for your neighbor or was it for you? Read the room. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day, and like vinegar and soda, it ruins the whole thing. Of course, cold day, you need a jacket. You take the jacket away. Do you know that there is a time to sing songs to a person who is of heavy heart? Matter of fact, so effective is it that it's something that's just better felt than heard. Well, how am I supposed to? But then there's another time where you sing a song to a person when they're heavy of heart and you just totally put them off. Well, I can't be just concerned about how everyone else is going to react. Well, you need to be. You need to be why. Again, if your goal is to actually help, then you will consider these things. What is appropriate? So let me just tell you guys right now, the worst thing you can do with Jordan, if you get into an argument with her, is be like, come here, baby, give me a hug. She's like, oh. I guarantee you, she would rip my throat out if I try to hug her during an argument. But Maddie, I'm picking on her, but Maddie, yes, if maybe she's getting in a disagreement with Garrett, what is she like? She wants to be held. You have got to know who you're talking to. You've got to pay attention, and you've got to read the room. Proverbs is not a perfect formula. It's telling you things that are true, and now it's telling you, okay, now go. So the real question is, and as I'm ending, do we have the heart to communicate well? Do we have the right goal? And if we do, then we're going to listen, we're going to be quiet, and we're going to start giving a lot of thought. And then comes the time to speak, and we'll pick up there next week. Thank you for your attention. Hope this is helpful to you. If we can help you in any way, if you need to obey the gospel, anything like that at all, let us know as together we stand and we sing.